Welcome to the Bywords Show. I'm your host, Hannah Hughes. Bywords is all about equipping women for purposeful living by starting conversations, celebrating stories, and inspiring faith. In a world that applauds the hustle, I'm here to help you break free from the lies and come back to what really matters. It's time to get real, get rooted in truth, and come alive in relationship with Jesus so you can show up to each day with intention and confidence no matter where you're at in your story. Here we believe that embracing our stories brings hope, healing, and purpose to the process, and sharing our stories helps others do the same. Whether you're looking for a midweek faith refresh, practical tools for pursuing your dreams, or just need some good old-fashioned girl talk, you're in the right place. Grab your latte and let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Bywords Show. I'm so glad you're here today. Today is the day, y'all. I've got a new friend with me, Samantha Vigneau. It's so cool. Actually, one of my TikTok followers tagged me in one of your TikToks and was like, this is a collab we need to see. And I started watching your content and I was like, you're amazing. I'm so happy that we connected and we're actually making this happen. So first of all, Samantha, welcome to the show. So glad you're here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. I know I was so excited too when one of our followers connected us and I looked at your content and I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, we definitely need to collab. So excited to be here.
Yeah, it's so fun. I'm so excited that you're here. I have to ask you our little warm-up question that we ask at the beginning.
Okay.
And that's, what is filling your cup lately? Literally, but also figuratively.
Okay. Literally, I recently made a switch from coffee with French vanilla creamer in the morning to black coffee because I'm trying to be healthy. I'm trying not to start my morning with sugar right away.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's made a big difference lately in just like a little tweak in my health and how I feel in the morning. And so I've been getting more used to black coffee. It takes a minute. It's an acquired taste, but over time now I just resort to black coffee.
Wow, I'm so impressed. I feel like that's a bold switch. I'm not ready for that yet. I just got back into the coffee world and I'm like, if it's not a latte, I don't know if I can do it.
I get it. I totally get it. Cause I do later in the day, sometimes I'll have like a dessert coffee with French vanilla creamer or whatever. But anyway, long answer to your. So yeah, it's black coffee has been literally filling my cup. And then as far as spiritually, emotionally, mentally filling my cup, I would say that lately I have been very intentional about being in the moment and with whatever task I'm doing, whether it's walking or eating or like doing the dishes. I've been trying to like find joy in that specific moment, kind of like meditating in the moment and feeling like what's around me and feeling God in that moment. And even like when I'm going on walks, I've been not bringing music. Usually I have headphone and music and stuff, and I've been trying to just walk in silence. And so anyway, so that's kind of been filling my cup, just that like alone time with the Lord and just being in the present moment.
Okay, I love that. And that's something I really struggle with. But it's so funny how backwards it can seem, like how it can actually fill your cup to take stuff out, like decluttering your mental space. Yeah. But it makes so much sense. I love that. Man, that's a good reminder for me. I need to do more of that. Stillness, take it in the moment, not trying to multitask my way through life. Already, this is so good. But y'all, okay, so today, let's get into the meat of this because we're talking about some hot topics: singleness, dating in the church world, and also breakups, healing, everything in between. So to start us off, Samantha, do you want to just share a little bit about your story and then what got you so passionate about now speaking on this topic?
Yes, definitely. So I actually grew up Catholic. My family is Catholic, but we weren't like a religious household. You know, I didn't go to church every Sunday. I didn't really have a relationship with God when I was younger. And then I went to, high school, college. I was the like party girl, kind of went wild. Definitely had that like full-blown American college experience. And then in my early 20s, I landed a, good corporate job, still work for the same company at a mortgage company. I love my job, but I kind of went through a lot. I ended up, falling in love, and within that relationship actually found God. With my ex-boyfriend, I was again going through a lot, and then we ended up deciding to go to church together. He grew up in church, so we went to the church that he grew up in, and he kind of got away from the Lord too, I think. And then we both started again going to church together, and that's where I really found God. We ended up being together for a while. I actually lived with him for a little bit, and we kind of were in this state of on and off for many years too. I ended up being with him probably for like 8 or 9 years throughout my 20s. I'm 32 now. I always imagined my life with him. Like, I never imagined a life without him. And we tried so hard to make it work. I think I was 29 when we finally like broke things off, and I was at a point where again I found God when I was 22. I don't think I mentioned that. So early 20s, found God. God just started revealing so much to me about my identity in Christ and who I am, and about relationships as well. So over time, he slowly started to show me more about things that I wanted in a relationship, and even like marriage, like being with someone for that long. It was kind of like, okay, why aren't we getting married? What's going on here? You know what I mean? So I just felt like I was in a constant state of waiting for him to ask me to marry him and stuff like that. I just got to the point where I was like, okay, I need to move on with my life. So we finally broke things off, and I went through a few years of just healing and grieving and mourning, and it was challenging. And it was challenging to not just want to jump. I did kind of have like a rebound relationship for a minute, like 2 to 3 months, bad situation. And that's natural. Like, we want to naturally just jump in. We don't want to deal with the junk. We don't want to deal with the hurt. We want to just jump right to the next relationship. But I shouldn't call it a rebound relationship, but like the situationship really made me stop in my tracks. Like, okay, why am I going after this certain type of person? Why am I letting men treat me the way I've been treated? Like, what's not healed in me that I need to deal with? And so I actually went on a break from dating for about like a year after that. And I was like, okay, I need time with the Lord. I need to like assess. And it was really hard. But anyway, that's kind of a lot. So I'm going to stop talking right now, and you can kind of take that wherever you want to go. But
no, I think already you just pointed out so many things that so many women struggle with in the dating relationship world, but we don't hear a lot about. Because I don't know about you. Well, you said you grew up Catholic, so you weren't really in the church world until your 20s, which is so interesting. I'd love to hear about your experience and perspective on that, because for me, growing up in the church world, growing up in purity culture, there was so much pressure to like find the one, or the I kiss dating goodbye era, where it's like, it's not just dating, it's courting, and relationships and dating are so serious. And then it's like, yes, God made us for relationship, but now dating is this super high stakes thing that I feel like I can't even enjoy or be in the moment, because I'm so worried about like, is this the one? Is it not the one? Is this God's will? And all of that. So like, there's so much pressure, I feel like, in the church world to find your person quickly, get married quickly, and get to those stages of life. Did you experience any of that? I know you mentioned a little bit like after breakup, it's uncomfortable for us to be single. Like, we want to be with someone if we have the desire in our heart to be in relationship for marriage later on in life, but like, what was that like for you? Did you ever feel that pressure when you were like in your 20s, when you started getting into the church world, and then like after your breakup? What was that like?
Yes, I love that question. I have some friends that grew up in purity culture, and I grew up kind of the opposite, where I didn't learn about any of that. It was like we didn't think about boundaries, and so it was kind of like two extremes, like So I just started, when I came to the Lord, started thinking about, oh, maybe I need some boundaries here. Maybe this is why the Lord is guiding me to slow it down in relationships, really take the time to get to know someone emotionally. But as far as that breakup that I went through, so the reason I started this podcast is because I noticed that, yes, there is a ton of pressure to kind of find someone. And even this is even outside of the church. it's almost like society makes it like if we're not with someone, we're sad, we're lonely, something's wrong with us. If we're not married by the age of 30, and even women feel the pressure younger than that, probably like 25. It's like, I want to be married, I
Yeah.
want to have kids. And so if you don't fit in that box, if you're not like a young adult in your early 20s or married by the time you're 25, you kind of feel a little like an outcast. And so when my ex and I broke up, I moved churches, and I actually started going to a church by myself. And so I kind of would just like sit by myself for a few years. I was just like, I just need God. Like, I'm just coming here for that. I wasn't even really interested in meeting other people. But then over time, I'm like, okay, I need to like mingle with people. I need to get to know people. I need to talk to people. But yes, that was something I definitely noticed, where there was a gap and there wasn't enough attention for people to really get to know themselves and really find oneness with God and relationship with God and identity in the Lord first, before, getting into a relationship. And that's not to say that we need to be perfect before a relationship. And a lot of people, you can still grow in yourself and your identity when you are in a marriage or in a relationship. But I
Right.
think it is a very unique opportunity when you do get to find yourself on your own and kind of go through some of the things that you need to go through, like heal some of the parts of your past that need attention. And it is a unique opportunity and a blessing if you have the eyes to see it. A lot of people don't. We want to just skip
Yeah.
right past it, and that's literally why I started this podcast.
I think that's great. Well, that's such a good point, because I feel like so many young girls grow up thinking, or, like inside of the church, outside the church, whatever, we feel this pressure to find the one, get married, start a family, like that's just the rhythm of life that
Yeah.
we are taught is the way to go, and then like you said, if we break up with someone that we think is the one, or we're single later in our 20s coming into our 30s, or we have divorce, breakups, anything like that, we wonder, okay, what's wrong with me? And we just want to fill that gap. Like,
Mm-hmm.
again, we are made for relationship, and if God has given us the desire for marriage, it's hard. Like, it's the waiting is hard. I remember a season of singleness after a really tough breakup before I met my now husband, and it's uncomfortable being in that
Mm-hmm.
season. But I love that you said it is such a unique opportunity and invitation from the Lord to heal, to figure out our own identity, like really lay that foundation. Because what I find, and I was even guilty of this in my own like dating and healing journey, thinking that when I get married, it's going to complete me. Like, I'm going to find
Yeah.
this person who's going to complete me. And that's just not true.
Right.
Because I think I've even had this conversation with my therapist before, because I feel like so many women expect their husband to fill every need that they have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, because it's not really a popular perspective that's talked about a lot, especially today. But if we think back even 50 years ago, the world was so much more community centered. Like we were doing things together, raising kids as a village, like that kind of verbiage. And there was so much like women doing life together with raising kids, and the husbands. And, like it wasn't the husband being the end all be all for their
Yeah.
wives. There was so much more friendship and community that was emphasized. Anyway, and so I've started thinking more about those things, because I see, and I've had conversations with friends who just expect their husband to fill every gap for them. And then you end up so disappointed when you realize, oh, getting married doesn't change anything.
Right.
It honestly just kind of exaggerates and like illuminates all of those gaps that we didn't realize that were there before we were trying to have our significant other fill. Anyway, that was a whole soapbox tangent. But basically, I would love to hear, how did you start to find yourself at that time? Because really, singleness is such a unique opportunity, and it's one that can so quickly be wasted when we want to rush past it. But how do we make the most of that season and our relationship with the Lord during that time?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, I love everything you're saying, because I was there with my ex-boyfriend. I looked to him like he was a god, I guess. If I look back, I completely did idolize him, especially because I entered into a relationship with him when I didn't even know the Lord. Thinking about life without him was just very scary, because I'm like, oh my gosh, he's everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yes, there was parts of myself that I lost in that relationship because I was so focused on him. And then in my immaturity, I also looked to him to make me happy.
Mm.
And that taught me a lot, that that's too much pressure for anyone,
Mm.
to put your happiness on another person. And that's just with any relationship in life. But
Yeah.
beyond that, when we actually decided, okay, this isn't working, it's time to move on, I really just went into a time of examining all the things that I really do love and I enjoy
Mm.
and that make me happy. The things that I did as a kid that came naturally to me, that I really enjoyed, that I lost sight of, that I got away from. And I wrote a lot of lists. I'm big on lists. So just writing down all the things I love and that make me happy.
I love
People
that.
that make me happy, interests that I have, and I would make it a point to go out of my way to bring those things back into my life. And with relationships, there was, even in that relationship, I lost communication with certain people, or I had some other relationships that I wasn't paying as close attention to because it was all about my boyfriend.
Mm.
And so it taught me that these other relationships, I mean, we talk about romantic love so much in our society, but what about the love of a friend, a best friend that's been with you through all different phases of life, or cousin that you've known since your childhood that has gone through all different stages with you, the love of a sibling, a mother, a father with their children, or grandparents. I really started to focus on that love and that
Mm.
connection and really make space to have that quality time with them. That community is so important. And that's why I love that you mentioned that. I love the story of Mary
Mm.
when she found out that she was pregnant with the Messiah, and Joseph. Of course, like, probably 99% of the men out here would be like, "Whoa, wait, you're pregnant?
Yeah.
How is this possible?" And so he kind of went off the scene for a minute. And you don't see her even like worry about him. She's like, "Well, I'm just going to," she went to Elizabeth's, her cousin's house,
Mm.
and she stayed with Elizabeth. And it seemed like, when she walked in the door, Elizabeth was so excited, and she knew that she was pregnant with the Messiah. She just knew because they were so close and connected. And it's such a beautiful example of friendship. Then she just stayed with Elizabeth, through her pregnancy, and was preparing for this promise that God put on her life. But
Mm.
I just love that, because I think so often we're in such a rush to jump out of our single season, but there's people that God has placed right around you that he wants you to build that intimate connection with. And there's so many people we can bless. There's so many people around to bless us. Like, there's so many like cool connections in this season that, if we aren't in such a rush to try to get out of it, can be such a blessing.
I love that. And that's such a beautiful illustration. I've never thought about that story that way before, but it's so true. We have to have those other people, other kinds of relationships for like a holistic, like community in our lives.
Yeah.
We can't just put all of our expectations on one person to fulfill besides God. Like that's just going to end up in disappointment and messes. And, it's just not good for anybody. But I
Right.
think that's such a good point, because there are so many things for me when I think about my dating experience. For those who don't know, like I had a really toxic, horrible relationship in college. And then I had a season of singleness before I met my husband. And during that time is when I just really went deep with the Lord and, really did a lot of healing work in my heart and in my mind and my life as a whole. But then I started dreaming again with the Lord. And I just realized how much, kind of like you said, was just right there in front of me. These people that were in my life, these opportunities, these things that God called me to that were already right here. And I didn't have to wait for a spouse to
Mm.
be living in my purpose and the things that
Yeah.
God created me to do. Right. And so I think it's so interesting that so many women, and again, this is something that I myself felt like pressured to do, is like kind of even compromise that for the sake of finding that person, if that makes sense. Like it's
Mhm.
so easy for us to quote settle and even let go of some of those things because we're like, well, I mean, this person is great and like maybe it doesn't tick every box, or like maybe I won't do all these other things that I thought I would do or that I feel like maybe God is calling me to do, but I'm comfortable in this relationship. Or I don't know. Does that make sense? Can you speak to the sense of settling? Like you were in your relationship for a really long time. Were there
Mhm.
points where you were like, well, this is just how it's going to be. And like, maybe we'll just accept that, versus finally getting to a point where I was like, okay, this just isn't it. And I'm willing to sacrifice the comfort of being with somebody that I love for the sake of what I believe God has for me that's better, even though that's so hard to do.
Yeah. It's so hard. It's very hard. And it took me a long time to really come to terms with the fact that we are trying so hard to make it work and it's just not working. And I think the first step is kind of breaking up with the vision. A lot of us have this vision in a relationship, or if we're with someone, it's like, well, now I visualized my entire life with them and
Right.
this is what I need to happen. But in reality, if none of those things are happening, that's what was the wake up call for me. I'm like, okay, I have this vision, but in reality, it's like the complete opposite. So I really need to, in this moment, use wisdom. And when I thought about the relationship years down the road, I didn't have peace about it. That was a sign that God, I believe that if the person is for you, that you should have peace about that, like deep in your soul. And so that was the wake up call for me. But as far as settling, I really had to overcome the fear of, being on my own again. Because it is scary. It's scary for anyone that's gone through a serious breakup, or maybe you're going through a divorce or whatever it may be. We do have to work up the confidence to say, okay, I can do this. I can be on my own. God's got me. And every closed door is also a new beginning. And it takes a lot of mental and emotional and spiritual strength to step out in the unknown with God. However, the Lord will guide us and he will be there with us, and he's close to the brokenhearted. So, during that time, that hard time, he's so close. I've never felt so close to God than when I actually like stepped out. And it was very hard, again, at first, very hard, but you just feel his presence so closely. And if we turn to him, he'll guide us. Long story short, to what you were asking about settling, I'm at the point where I know what it's like to be in a relationship that's not good for me, that mentally, physically, emotionally takes a toll on me. Now I need to wait on God for the person that he has for me. This man doesn't need to be perfect, but I'm at the point where I have worked on myself so much and I'm at such a nice place with the Lord that I need to wait for the man that will add to my life and not take away. So I think that's what keeps me from not settling. I think there's a difference between being picky and, not settling, because sometimes people can be super nitpicky and no one's perfect. But I think the biggest thing is making sure that someone aligns with your values, that emotionally you feel safe with them and secure with them, and that, again, you're aligned on that firm foundation in Christ.
I love that. And I appreciate you sharing that, because that's a hard point to be in. Like, when you get to the point where, it's uncomfortable and, like you said, vulnerable, scary, feeling like, okay, well, I'm going to be on my own again. And like, now in this season of singleness, how do you hold that tension where it's like, yes, I desire this relationship, but also I'm not going to just sit around waiting for it. Like, I'm going to continue actively living my life and, making the most of everything God has for me in this season. What does that look like for you now?
Yes. And that's a great question. You're asking all good questions. I want to make sure people know, like, I wrestle with God about this a lot, and it's hard because it's like, oh, okay, I've been single now for 3 years. And so I'm like, Lord, I'm ready. Like, where's my husband? And there's like opportunities that pop up, but I'm like, you date and then you figure out, no, we're not meant to be together. And, or you just know he's not the one. And so I go through many nights where I'm like, Lord, what is up? Like, what's going on? Where's my husband? You know what I mean? And it's just constantly seeking God and staying close to him and really making the choice to let him guide you, which is, it sounds easy, but it's hard. I understand it's hard. However, I just know that I do not want to be in a relationship that pulls me away from my closeness with the Lord, because I've been there before. It leads to so much pain, so much hurt, and I don't want to go through that again. And I know God doesn't want me to go through that again either. But the thing I would say, if anyone is in that season of waiting for their husband or their spouse, it's really just making the decision to be comfortable. Like, okay, I'm going to wait a little longer because I want to wait on the promise that God has for me. And I just read something about the mustard seed and how the Bible talks about how the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, and like a seed, it carries life in it.
Mm.
When it's placed in the proper conditions, then it will grow and give life. But the seed by itself, it's protecting the promise until it's ready to actually germinate in under the proper conditions. So I think our waiting season, we can view it as, okay, I'm protecting the promise from God. I'm not going to waver unless I know this is from the Lord. And I'm still going to have fun. You know, I'm going to go through my life and enjoy the now, enjoy my family, enjoy my friends, enjoy my church, enjoy my job. I'm going to seek God right now and protect the promise and enjoy my life, and trust that that seed will germinate at the proper time.
I love that you said that, because I think it's so easy in seasons of singleness to just let life pass you by and just sit around waiting and thinking about it all the time. And I mean, I'm speaking from experience, just like thinking about it all the time. Every date with someone wondering, okay, is this the one? And like,
Right.
getting so ahead of yourself, and then you just miss out on being present, which is cool because it's like the first thing you said right now that's filling your cup is just really being present. And so I love that you're just in the moment with the Lord and trusting, because how much more fulfilling will it be to find the right person when you're operating from that state of mind and that state of fulfillment in the Lord? Like, that's a really beautiful thing. And I love that. And I'm just so glad that you brought that up, because I just remember when I was in my season of singleness and so many friends who were going through that at the same time, and even now just feeling so miserable in the waiting. But it doesn't have to be miserable. So I would love to know, do you have any advice for the single girlies who are listening on how you can enjoy the singleness season, whether it's dating or just being on your own and like rediscovering those things about yourself? If you are dating, like, how do you make it not such high stakes? Like it can sometimes tend to be with that pressure.
So to answer your first question, something I did recently was, I've been thinking about stewarding time and the waiting season. And again, not feeling like you're waiting, like we're not sitting around waiting, twiddling our thumbs. It's like, no, God has a lot for me in this season. It's a season of preparation. It's a season to enjoy right now. We can live our life to its fullest right now. And there's so many blessings right in front of us. So anyway, I felt led to write a list. Again, I like my list. I felt led to write a list of what are things that I feel called to do right now in this season. And I wrote, do my best at my job. I wrote set up a virtual podcast.
Look at you
situation go. Because I usually just do like solo or have people over my house to interview, but I knew I needed virtual and I was putting it off. So I was like, set up my virtual studio, rebrand my podcast, connect with certain people in my life that I want to make sure that they know, like, I'm here for them. I want deeper connection with them, serve at my church and like really enjoy it, get out and meet people. So I wrote a list of, okay, where do I feel led right now to really like live my life and do the best I can? And I've been checking off things that I've been doing on that list. And it just helps kind of like occupy your time, occupy your mind. And it's fun watching things come to life, like this virtual interview. I'm like, this is on my list of things, and I did it. I've been putting it off for like a year, honestly.
That's so cool. Yep. I love that. And then like for dating, how do you enjoy that piece?
Yes. Oh, okay. Yes, dating can be, it can be interesting. It's fun. We have to keep in mind that we want to still have fun, like what you were talking about earlier as a young girl growing up in purity culture, how you felt like the stakes were so high and I don't want to make the wrong turn and blah blah blah. Like when you're staying close with God and your own personal relationship with him, it's okay. There's room, like we're not going to be perfect. So don't worry about, oh, maybe I said the wrong thing to him, or maybe I missed my opportunity here, whatever. God's going to be guiding your steps, and it's okay to have fun and not worry so much about, oh, I'm going to miss my husband because I'm at the wrong place, or I need to be here, I need to be there. Like, just relax, just rest, knowing that God is guiding your steps, and the right person he has for you, you're not going to miss that.
Yeah.
The Bible talks about how our lives are written before the foundations of the world. So you're not going to miss out on the person that God has for you. So I just want to say that for anyone feeling like, oh, I'm going to miss it, it's too late, no, that's not going to happen. But I have been trying to tell myself, like, it's okay to just have fun and get to know different guys too. As friends, if someone asks you on a date where maybe you don't know, if it's going to go anywhere, like, it's okay to go and have fun and have conversation and get to know different people. Cause then it guides you also to who or what you want in a spouse.
Yeah.
So that is one thing that I've been focused on. And then the second thing is I've been trying to make it more clear when I'm interested in someone, because I think guys need us to give them the hint. Like,
Yes.
hey, I'm interested in you. I'm looking at you. I see.
So true.
Giving more eye contact, being more flirty, smiling. I have been working on that. Like, there's been a couple guys. I'll give you some inside scoop a little bit.
Oh, okay. I love this.
So I have been going to the same church probably for like 6 years now. And there's been like no guys for a while. And I said, Lord, if I'm staying at this church, I need some good looking guys to pop up in this church, okay?
I love it. I love it. So real.
Yeah, if you're keeping me here, I need some. So literally over the last year, I swear, ever since I prayed that prayer, there have been guys popping up that are really cute. And I'm like, thank you, God. But I have, again, just been trying to it's scary talking to these guys at church, or, walking up, introducing yourself.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I get shy like that. I'm not like a one to chase a guy. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
you got to chase me. But there is something about making sure that you are still making it known. Like, even if you see someone in church, like making sure you're like, hey, I see you.
Yeah.
Or, if you do have the opportunity to introduce yourself, or ask a friend to put in a good word for you, or I've been trying to do that more, and not so like in my shell and waiting for the guy to know that I'm interested when I'm walking past him and not looking at him, and not giving him any hint that I'm interested. So put the feelers out there, ladies, is all I'm saying.
I love that so much. That's so real. Like, praying those prayers is like, all right, Lord, I'm going to be where you want me to be, but also like, hey,
I need you to help me.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. I love that so much. I love the inside scoop.
Yep.
Can I ask you a hard question?
Yes.
Because this is something that's not talked a lot about when it comes to singleness, but Paul does write about some people being called to singleness. And I feel like no one in their single season wants to hear that. But have there been moments for you where you've, come to peace with that, or just kind of like surrendered, like, okay, Lord, for this season, however long it lasts, like, if I'm called to singleness? Or have you talked to people who are older and single and they're like, I don't know if I'm just not going to be married in this life? Like, what does this look like for me?
Yes, that is a really good question. So I have two answers to that question. So the first one was when I was in therapy about probably 6 months ago, or maybe a year ago at this point. My therapist talked to me about, to relieve the pressure of getting married on a certain timeline. A lot of us women, we have these timelines, like the clock is ticking, I need to be married by X and da da da.
Yeah.
And when that doesn't happen, it can be really painful. I know that pain firsthand. And she asked me the question she said, ask yourself what your life would look like if you never got married or you never had kids. What would your life look like? And I was kind of upset at first, because I'm like, why would she tell me to ask that? Like, I'm a woman of faith, like, I'm going to believe. But then it made me realize that it is good perspective for us to have. like, what would my life look like without these things? Because what I found out is I could still have a very happy and fulfilled life without those things. I have God, I have a home, I have food, I have water, I have a great family, I have great friends, great church community. Like, I could still have a happy, fulfilled life on my own, because I would just continue living how I'm living today.
Right.
And that would be okay. So I would say that is good perspective to have. On the other hand, to address, what Paul says about it is better to be single, or some people are called to be single. Well, I think it's the better to be single part is, and I'm not like quoting him exactly, but I think there is such a blessing in singleness where you have so much time to just spend with God one on one, and you don't have a distraction. Because when we get married, like, you're caring for your husband, you're caring for your kids. Like, there's so many other things in the mix, and that's part of a lot of what I talk about in Single Status Podcast. We have this time to spend on ourselves, to spend with the Lord, to do what we want to do all the time, and to not really consider these other people that we're taking care of. So there is such a blessing in that. I just want to make sure that I do say this one thing. So a spiritual mentor of mine, I asked her that question. I said, do you think it's okay to believe that I will get married one day? Or do you think it's okay to believe with someone else that they will get married one day? Or is that something that God isn't promising to us? And her response was, this is interesting, but in the Old Testament, you can look at like the days of Esther, where she had these eunuchs who were men that worked in the queen's courts, and they were kind of like servants of the queen. And in order for them to work around the queen and around other female servants, they actually had to be castrated because they wanted to avoid any sexual relations going on. And so, bringing it to the New Testament, my spiritual mentor said, if you are called to a life of singleness, the Lord will give you the supernatural strength to be celibate your entire life, and to basically take away that desire, because the desire is so strong in us as humans, the sexual desire that we have. And it's not all about sex, relationships. Right. I'm not saying that, but it's such a strong desire in us that that the Lord will make it very clear if you are called to a life of singleness, because he will help you overcome that desire for the rest of your life. And so she said, you can absolutely believe and have faith that God will provide you with marriage one day, if you have that desire in your heart, especially if you are growing and walking in relationship with the Lord, and that desire is growing in you. You can take that as a sign that, okay, this is biblical, marriage is biblical. And since that desire is actually growing in me, and that's my experience, the closer I get with the Lord, the more that desire actually grows to be in a marriage, which is interesting, because sometimes I'm like, Lord, then why aren't you just giving it to me? But I know in due time it will come, and we can have faith, and you can believe that that's the same for you. And we have to, just like anything, if we feel like, yes, God has promised that, God has put that on my heart, we need to work with him on that. We can't just sit back and let ourselves go, never go outside, never meet anyone. Like, we also need to walk in faith with him, and do the things that we can do to like put the faith in action.
Yeah. I think that's such a great response. And it's true. Like, I've talked to some girls who feel like, well, I have this desire, but am I just called to be single forever? But I think that's such a good point. Like, if you are actively in relationship with the Lord, walking with the Holy Spirit, and that desire is in your heart, that is a desire from God, first of all, to be married. Like, that's part of his design for our relationships, and even like showing the world a reflection of his love. Like, that's literally the example he chooses to show the world his love. So we can trust him with that. And it is so hard. But I think you speak so beautifully to how do we show up and make the most of this singleness season, because it's not a wasted season. it's just as important as any other piece of the story, so I love that you share that. And I just love to know, before we go, is there anything else you want to say to the girls who are single and waiting and just holding on to that hope right now?
I would just say what's coming to my heart right now is to make sure your faith is larger than your doubt, because I think sometimes we go through these periods of time where we start questioning God, and it's easy to kind of get down, and I get it. It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah.
But there's so many amazing stories in the Bible of people that waited on the promises of God, that continued to put their trust in God, continued to put their faith in God, and he shows up. He always shows up, and it might be in a different way that we ever thought he would show up, or a different timeline, but one day it'll all make sense.
Yeah.
And so I would say make sure your faith is larger than your doubt, and just know that your life is written out. And so when we rest in the Lord, when we keep him first, when we seek him, everything's lining up and coming together at the proper time.
I love that. That's so good. Thank you for sharing that. And I love that you've just made space for other people to come. And I know you mentioned like you wrestle with the Lord on this. And I think that's a good thing, a healthy thing to do, because I know in my season of singleness, like some of the ways that I was able to get so free and so healed and so I feel prepared for marriage was asking God those hard questions, wrestling with that, getting to the root of things so that I had a really solid foundation to build a relationship on. So
Yeah.
I love that that's what you do, having these conversations on your podcast. So will you please tell everybody where they can connect with you, learn more, listen to your podcast, all the things?
Yes, of course. I am on Instagram at Samantha Vigneau, Vigneau. Instagram and TikTok, you can find me. And then I have Single Status podcast. It's on Apple, Spotify, all the podcast platforms. And then we're also on YouTube, so you can watch there as well.
Perfect. Yay. Well, thank you so much for being here, Samantha. You guys, I'll make sure everything is linked for you. Go connect with her. She's got just a treasure trove of wealth and knowledge and wisdom on the singleness topic. And I'm just so grateful that you were here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been such an honor and blessing to be here with you. And I'm excited to have you on Single Status soon as well.
Yes, y'all will have to come and check it out. We're going to be chatting there too. So yeah, stay tuned. Thank you guys. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tune in to another episode of the Byword Show. I love having you here, and your support truly means the world to me. If you enjoyed this episode, would you leave a quick review? It really helps our community grow and reach more women. If you want more, you can shop my books, Waking Up, Living Open, and Love Is on Amazon, and be sure to sign up for my email list so you always get the latest news. I can't wait to chat again soon, but in the meantime, be sure to come hang out with me on social media, and remember, I'm cheering you on.